Nobody tells you which time is the last time. They tell you about all the firsts. First word, first step, first day of school, first tooth, first date. We photograph the firsts. We write them in baby books. We call grandma. But nobody tells you about the lasts. The last time you packed their lunch, the last school morning, the last family vacation when everybody is still technically a kid. The last time we yell, "We're leaving in 5 minutes," while knowing absolutely nobody has located their shoes. Because here's the thing about most lasts. You don't know they're the last time while they're happening. And then one day, the house gets quiet. They'll visit, but childhood isn't coming back. That version of your family, everybody under one roof, everybody coming home at night. That chapter actually ended, and nobody really tells you what comes next. And that's what I want to talk about today. What happens to the relationship when your children become adults? And parents, when the job you've had for 20-some years suddenly changes, who are you now? I'm Stephie Kay, and this is You Stickin With That? Let's get into it.
Hey, Stephie Kay got something to say. Talk that listens, clears the way. Truth on the mic, grounded in change. You sticking with that? Oh yeah, we sticking with that. Laugh it out, talk it through, we ain't looking back.
Some chats ain't easy, but we take it slow. Tough stuff tackled now, watch us glow.
Sticking with it. Yeah, we sticking with that.
I woke up with a scratchy throat, so if I sound a little rough around the edges, it's because I am currently powered by tea, determination, and denial. Let's do this anyway. Part 1. The strangest job in the world. Parenting has to be one of the only jobs where if you do it right, eventually you're no longer needed. What kind of job description is that? Imagine your boss calling you in. "Hey, Stephie, fantastic work. You've trained everybody to function completely without you. Please turn in your keys." That's parenting, and that's what we want. I have 3 kids who grew up and went out into the world. They're functioning. They're building lives. They're making decisions. And that's exactly what we raised them to do. I wanted independent kids. I wanted capable kids. I wanted kids who didn't need to call their mom every 17 minutes. Although I may have overshot the goal slightly. You can still call your mother. But here's the strange part. You can be incredibly proud that they don't need you the way they used to. And miss being needed at exactly the same time. Both can be true. For years, your life revolves around them. Practices, school, appointments, friends, laundry, dinner. Who needs a ride? Who's upset? Who suddenly remembers that they needed a poster board for a project tomorrow morning? And then one day, nobody needs that poster board. And somehow, you miss the poster board. Part 2, take the picture. My youngest son was just here for a week. My daughter, Sydney, who lives here, and her fiance were part of a lot of it. My oldest son had to work, so unfortunately, we didn't have everybody together. But we had such a great week. Carter and I had several new experiences. We went horseback riding and parasailing. We returned to zip lining, something our whole family had done a couple times in the past. But it had been a while. We got to hit an amazing comedy night, game night, and a whole bunch of other stuff in between. We ate, we laughed, and I wanted pictures of everything. My kids did not necessarily share my enthusiasm. Some of the pictures from the beginning of the week, you'd think these people were being held against their will. I'm like, just one picture. And they're looking at me like, we took one yesterday. Yes, and we've lived an entire day since then. And I'll admit, it hurt my feelings a little bit when they weren't 100% on board with my pictures. Because I wasn't asking for the picture because I needed something to post. I actually don't post them at all. I wanted it because I know something now that they don't know yet. I know how fast this goes. I know that someday the ordinary dinner becomes that photograph you treasure. The dumb selfie becomes the one you enlarge. The blurry picture becomes the one where you say, "Oh my gosh, look how young we were." And here's what cracks me up. If they want a picture for Instagram, suddenly everybody knows how to pose. Now we need lighting, angles. Apparently there's a correct side of everyone's face. Mom asked for one picture and suddenly I'm the paparazzi. By the end of the week, though, everybody was smiling a little better. After my son left on Monday, I took those pictures and made a little music video of our week. And watching it back, I realized something. The things we did weren't actually the best part. Being together was. And that's what changes when your children leave home. The ordinary stuff becomes extraordinary. Dinner is an event. Everybody being in the same room feels like a holiday. Part 3. Now we have to choose each other. When your kids are little, the relationship is built into everyday life. You're together because, well, where else are they going? They're 8. They can threaten to move out all they want. I can remember one night when my oldest was younger, maybe 4 years old. He didn't want to eat his vegetables, so he was running away from home. And he didn't get very far. I don't even think he packed a bag. What I wouldn't give, ... But adult children can leave. They have homes, jobs, relationships, schedules, their own opinions, their own worlds. And suddenly, you're not maintaining a relationship because everybody lives at the same address. Now you have to choose each other. And I don't think we talk enough about how difficult that transition can be. I've talked with several friends about this. Parents who love their children, children who love their parents, and yet somehow one wrong conversation happens. Somebody says something badly. Somebody feels misunderstood. And suddenly nobody talks for weeks or months, and sometimes longer. And I keep wondering, how are you supposed to repair something if nobody will stay in the room long enough to repair it? Part 4. When did no contact become part of the vocabulary? Now, I want to be very careful here. There are toxic relationships out there. There are abusive relationships. There are situations involving addiction, manipulation, or repeated serious harm. Sometimes distance is necessary. Sometimes boundaries are. And sometimes no contact may genuinely be the healthiest or safest option. I am not telling somebody to walk back into a burning building because, but that's your mother. No. But here's what I am asking. What if the building isn't burning? What if somebody just burned the toast? Because I worry that somewhere along the way, we became really good at learning how to protect ourselves, but maybe not quite as good at learning how to repair things. And I started wondering, where is this coming from? Social media, AI, the culture, therapy? Are therapists actually telling adult children to cut off their parents? So I looked into it, and the answer isn't nearly that simple. There are psychologists who have raised concerns about therapy sometimes over-validating one person's interpretation of a family conflict. There are also psychologists who strongly argue that a good therapist shouldn't be deciding who a client keeps in their life at all. And professional guidance is much more nuanced than, your mother upset you? Block her. So I'm not blaming therapists. Let me make that very clear. I think the better question is, have we become better at teaching boundaries than we are at teaching repair? Because we need both. A healthy boundary says, this behavior isn't okay with me. It shouldn't automatically mean you must behave exactly the way I want or you lose access to me. And parents aren't exempt either. Being somebody's mother doesn't give you unlimited access to their life. Adult children are adults. But being an adult child doesn't give you unlimited permission to treat your parent terribly either. Respect has to travel in both directions. Part 5. My mother said take out the trash. Now, I'm 55, and I know every generation eventually says, kids these days. So I'm not going to pretend everything about my generation was better. It wasn't, but it was different. If my mother said take out the trash, I didn't respond, I don't have the emotional bandwidth for household waste today. I took out the trash. Maybe with a little attitude, but not enough attitude for her to hear. There was also something about disappointing your elders. I adored my grandma, and the last thing I wanted was for my grandma to find out I'd done something really bad. Her opinion mattered because I respected her, and I sometimes wonder whether we've lost a little of that. I can remember one time when I was maybe 6 years old, and we actually lived with my grandma for a time in a small town in Minnesota. And I was a couple doors down at the neighbors, and they had one of those little plastic table sets, just a table and chairs. They're probably made of jelly or something. I don't know, that little cheap plastic, probably $1 a chair or something back in those days. Anyway, I remember laying on their little table and it broke. I was devastated. The little neighbor girl who I was playing with, her dad was kind of scary. Anyway, I ran and hid under my grandma's bed in the house, and I was never coming out until, I don't know until what, but I was just mortified. I thought I was in such big trouble for breaking that. And somehow they went over and apologized for me, and it was obviously not even an issue, but to a little kid, I thought I'd done something wrong. But there was my grandma to the rescue. She was always there, somewhere. Grandparents aren't supposed to run the show. They're also more than another person in the group chat. They carry history, perspective, stories, and sometimes wisdom you don't understand until you're old enough to need it. Part 6. It took a village, and the village knew your mother. Maybe this is my small town side coming out, because growing up in a smaller community had disadvantages. Everybody knew everybody's business. And sometimes they knew your business before you knew your business. But there was an upside. Adults noticed kids. The neighbor knew your parents. The coach knew your family. The teacher might know your grandma. And if you're doing something you weren't supposed to be doing, some adult would inevitably appear and say the most terrifying sentence of childhood. Does your mother know you're doing that? No. And I was hoping you and I could keep it that way. But underneath all that nosiness, there was accountability. There was community. There was a village. And I wonder if some of our relationship problems are connected to losing those third places where generations used to mix. Front porches, church halls, neighborhoods, community groups, places where you didn't get to curate everybody around you. You had to learn to get along with people. You had to work things out. You had to talk. Part 7. Who raised the parents? I saw a video this week saying something like, our parents never dealt with their emotional trauma. They just passed it down to us. And I thought, okay, sometimes that's absolutely true. But then I thought, when does it stop? Every generation was raised by imperfect people. My own childhood was less than stellar in plenty of ways. And because of that, when I had kids, I wanted them to have the things I didn't have. I wanted to do better. Not perfectly, better. And I think millions of parents did that. We looked at the things that hurt us and said, I don't want to do that to my kids. Did we overcorrect sometimes? Probably. Did we make other mistakes? Absolutely. Our kids will too. That's being human. But if the standard for having a relationship becomes, you must never have hurt me, we're all going to be sitting alone. Your mother will get something wrong. Your dad will get something wrong. Your children will get something wrong. And brace yourselves. You will get something wrong. So maybe the measure of a healthy relationship isn't, did we ever hurt each other? Maybe it's, what did we do after we hurt each other? That's where the repair begins. Part 8. Okay, so how do we fix it? Let's make this practical. Because if your relationship with your adult child or your parent is strained, I don't want to just spend an hour describing the problem. Number 1, stop trying to win the case. Your family isn't a jury. You don't need Exhibit A through G proving you were a wonderful mom. And your adult child doesn't need a PowerPoint presentation proving every mistake you ever made. The goal isn't conviction. It's connection. 2, ask a better question. Instead of, what did I do now? Try, what do you wish I understood? And then, this is the hard part, listen to the answer without building your rebuttal while they're talking. Number 3, acknowledge the hurt without rewriting history. You can say, I don't remember it exactly that way, but I believe you that it hurt you. That doesn't mean you're agreeing to something you believe isn't true. It means the person matters enough for you to hear how they experienced it. Number 4, apologize like an adult. Not, I'm sorry you feel that way. That apology has repaired approximately 0 relationships. Try, I can see how what I said hurt you. I wish I'd handled that differently. And adult kids, this applies to you too. If you screamed at your mom, said something cruel, used silence as punishment, or treated your dad terribly, you may owe an apology too. Growing up doesn't mean graduating from accountability. Number 5, don't use silence as a weapon. Taking time to calm down is one thing. Say that, I love you, I'm upset, I need a couple days, and then let's talk. That's completely different from disappearing and making somebody wonder for 3 months if they still have a child. Number 6, stop trying to get the old relationship back. And maybe that's the biggest one. Your child isn't 12 anymore. And mom isn't the same person she was when you were 12 either. Maybe you're not supposed to recreate the old relationship. Maybe you're supposed to build a new one. Adult to adult, mother to daughter, father to son. Two people who share a history and hopefully still want a future. Part 9. And parents, find yourself. Because there's another side to this. Parents can put an enormous pressure on adult children without realizing it. If your entire identity, your entire social life, your entire happiness, and your entire sense of purpose is wrapped up in whether your kids call you, that's too much weight for them to carry. For 20-some years, you were mom, dad, coach, chauffeur, cook, nurse, calendar keeper, finder of lost shoes. Then the house gets quiet, and you have to ask, who am I now? Not, whose mother are you, or whose father are you? Who are you? What did you love before everybody needed you? What makes you laugh? Where do you want to go? What do you want to learn? Who do you want to meet? What do you want the next 20 years to look like? Maybe the empty nest isn't only an ending. Maybe it's an introduction to somebody you haven't spent enough time with in a very, very long time. You. And your children need you to find that person. Because the healthiest version of this isn't children who can't leave. It's children who are free to leave and still want to come back. Part 10. We used to have analog lives. There's one other thing I think's changed family life in ways we don't fully understand yet. Cameras. Everywhere. Thank goodness there was no iPhone following me around when I was 19. There are entire portions of my childhood for which no video evidence exists. And kids today don't have that luxury. And I think it's changed us too. I wonder how much freedom we've lost because everybody knows everything could become content. At the same time, I love having the pictures. I just spent a week trying to get my kids to take them. So there's a balance. Take the picture, but then put the phone down. Live the thing you're trying so hard to remember. Part 11. Don't let the internet own your childhood. Last episode, I talked about losing my main personal Facebook account back 5 years ago or so. But there was another part of that loss. The pictures. For years, when my kids were younger, I posted everything. And I got to the point sometimes where I delete pictures from my phone because, well, it's on Facebook. Please don't do that. A social media company should not have the only copy of your family history. Fortunately, I had friends who had lost accounts before I did, so I had saved my pictures. But it scared me because those aren't just posts. That's childhood. Christmas mornings, vacations, birthdays, grandparents, people who may not even be here anymore. So here's some practical homework. Download your social media pictures, back them up somewhere else, cloud storage, an external drive, and print some. And yes, print them. Someday, your grandchildren should be able to look at a picture of you without needing grandma's password. We're the keepers of our family stories. Protect them. But remember, the picture isn't the memory. Being there is. For my Stephie Kay Thought of the day today, I have the woman who needed a porch. And maybe that's why a little story out of Florida caught my attention this week. Because after everything we've talked about today, this story is about something we've almost forgotten how to do. Make room. So here's the backstory. A Wendy's employee named Dara was having a rough day. She was on her lunch break and walked into a nearby neighborhood. She saw a house with a porch. And she did something that I can't decide if it was brave, desperate, or wonderfully old-fashioned. She walked up to a stranger's house and asked, "Could I sit on your porch and eat my lunch?" And the homeowner, Abigail Mwangulu, said yes. That's it. That should barely be a story. A woman needed somewhere to sit. And another woman had somewhere to sit. "Can I sit here?" "Sure." Except the interaction was captured by the homeowner's Ring camera. It eventually made its way online. More than 1 million people watched it, and these two strangers became friends. People learned that Dara walks to work and hopes to pursue caregiving. And eventually, people who heard her story started helping with transportation and education. But here's what I can't stop thinking about. Why did something so ordinary feel extraordinary enough for more than 1 million people to watch? Nobody ran into a burning building. Nobody donated a kidney or wrestled an alligator, although this is Florida, so give us till Thursday. Someone needed somewhere to sit. Someone else said yes. And maybe that's why people couldn't look away, because maybe we missed the porch. And I don't necessarily mean the wooden kind with rocking chairs and sweet tea. I mean what a porch represents. Think about it. A porch was somewhere between inside and outside. You didn't have to invite everybody into your house, but you didn't have to leave them standing in the street either. There was a place in between. And maybe that's what some of our relationships need. A porch. A place where we can sit, talk, listen, be comfortable for a minute. A place where your grown child can come home without immediately becoming 12 years old. A place where mom can have feelings too. A place where somebody can say, "You hurt me," and the other person can stay long enough to hear why. Maybe that's the middle ground we've been missing. And parents, maybe that's part of our job after the kids leave. We don't chase them down the driveway. We don't hold on to their bumper. We let them go. We let them build their lives. We build ours. But we make sure they know there's still somewhere to sit. And kids, sometimes mom doesn't need you to move back home. She doesn't need you to need her like you did when you were 8. Sometimes she just wants you to sit for a while, have dinner, tell her what's happening, let her know you. And for goodness sake, take the picture. Because eventually there will be a last time for that too. And you probably won't know when it happens. Dara didn't ask Abigail to fix her life that afternoon. She just asked for a place to sit. Abigail didn't know where that simple yes would lead. She just made room. And maybe we don't repair families or neighborhoods or communities all at once. Maybe we repair them one porch at a time. As always, if someone came to mind while you were listening, someone who might need to hear this, send this episode their way. New episodes of You Stickin With That come out Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern on all social media platforms. There's a quote from Khalil Gibran that I keep coming back to. You may give them your love, but not your thoughts, for they have their own thoughts. And boy, is that easier to read in a poem than it is to live. Because I have thoughts. I have lots of thoughts. And occasionally, I think my children would benefit greatly from hearing every single one of them. But they're adults now. And loving an adult child means learning a whole new way to be their mother. You don't stop loving them. You don't stop being there. You don't stop being the place they can come home to. You just start trusting more of what you spent all those years teaching them. There's another familiar saying about giving our children 2 things: roots and wings. I think when they're little, we spend most of our time on the roots. This is who you are. This is where you come from. This is what matters. This is how you treat people. This is where home is. And then one day comes the part nobody warns you about, the wings. Because wings aren't much good if we spend the rest of our lives asking our kids not to use them. And maybe that's one of the hardest and most beautiful parts of motherhood. Realizing that their independence isn't evidence that you're no longer important. You gave them a safe place to start. You loved them. You taught them. You screwed some things up. They'll probably tell you which things. Mine do. You apologized when you needed to. You kept learning. And then, little by little, you opened your hands. Not because you love them less, because you love them enough to let their life belong to them. And here's the beautiful part. Letting them fly doesn't mean they never come back. The relationship doesn't disappear. It changes. And if we're willing to change with it, there can be something really wonderful waiting on the other side. You get to know this person you raised, not just as your child, but as an adult. You get to hear their ideas, watch them figure things out, see them become people you couldn't have completely imagined when you were packing lunches and sitting in pickup lines. And sometimes they might even call and ask what you think. Try not to sound too excited. So let them fly. Find yourself again. Build a life you're excited to tell them about when they come home. And make sure they always know there's a chair on the porch. And as I always say, I'll leave a light on for you. Roots, wings, and a door that's still open. And that's not the end of motherhood. That's just motherhood becoming something new. I love you guys. We'll see you Wednesday.